What is the myth about you or about White House life that you would like to dispel?
Well, where do we start? I mean, how much time do we have?
All the time you want.
Yeah, my goodness, there's so many. There's so many. Let me think. You know, I think that certainly from the outside, people see the White House as something of a mysterious place, you know, that it's a place of history and certainly of importance, and it symbolizes our democracy, but it's hard to even imagine until you live here what it's like. And I'd like to, you know, help people understand that certainly for my husband and me, we've tried to make the White House as accessible to people as possible so that it doesn't have a forbidding and formal image in people's minds, but that it is welcoming and that people do feel that it is the people's house and they are invited into it whenever the occasion arises. And we've certainly increased the numbers of people invited here for events of all kinds, because I think that in today's world it's important for people to feel as connected as possible with their government or with their president, and this house symbolizes that for many. So although, you know, we can't obviously invite every American, we take every chance we can to invite as many Americans as possible. And the numbers of tourists have increased, and, you know, the large events that we've tried to have here and the number of people who've been invited to something, I hope sort of destroys the myth of it being, you know, kind of a forbidding place that people are scared of, because I don't want them to be.
How can young people educate themselves about what media reports are real and what are just allegations or rumors?
You know, that's very hard, and it's getting harder because, you know, there are so many sources of information. And it certainly seems to be the case that many journalists and reporters or people with access to the internet feel compelled to just put anything out there that will get them attention or get them viewers or readers or subscribers or whatever. So I think it's becoming harder and harder for the average person to wade through all of the information to try to figure out what they believe and what they don't believe, and what could be partially true and what's totally untrue. And I think it's going to get worse. So I'm very concerned about this, because in a democracy like ours, where people have to make the majority of decisions about how they're going to be governed, either by voting or by supporting other actions at the local, state, and federal level, it's going to be very difficult for people to make good decisions if they can't believe the information that they've been given. And I guess at this point, it really requires a lot of work from citizens, because you have to read or view a lot of different sources and then try on your own to make sense of it. I don't think the average person has time for that. I mean, I don't know, if I didn't know things firsthand and I were just following the news from, you know, what is reported, I would be totally bewildered and confused much of the time. And if I were working and raising my family and involved in my community in some way, how would I ever get time to, you know, read a bunch of newspapers and get news off the internet and watch the nightly news and then say, okay, 10 people said this and 8 people said that, and I think that the 8 people are more right than the 10 people, and therefore this is what I believe. So I'm really worried about what's going to happen, because there's so much stuff, for example, on the internet that has no editing at all. It has no fact-checking. It can sound good, it can convince you at first reading, but it's not true. So how do we know that? I hope that what's going to happen is that journalists will realize that they are undermining their own profession by either not policing it better so that people who are irresponsible are not held in check in some way, and not giving people ways of arriving at accurate information that they can use. Because if journalists don't perform that function, then I think people will see it just as entertainment. They won't take it seriously. They won't use it as the basis for making decisions. And then that undermines the journalistic enterprise for the future. So I think it poses a lot of very serious questions about how we're going to run our democracy. Because I have now, over all these years, I've seen so many things printed and said that I know for a fact are not true. And it just becomes so overwhelming, such an enormous pile of factoids and allegations that are out there, that I worry that people will just turn away from the political process and the democratic process, and they'll say, who can believe any of this? I don't want to follow it. I'm not interested in it. They stop voting. They stop caring. And I don't think that's good for our country. So this is something we have to work on.